It's always hard as parents to know what we can and what we can't do with our children. And parents always want to do the right thing by their children. One of the things that I always say to parents, one of the most important things that we can do is to share oral language with our students, or with our children, I should say. When we're talking about oral language is the way that we can actually explain objects, explain happenings. And the more that we can get children to use oral language, the better opportunities they then have to be able to move into reading and writing. If parents are able to understand the real system of phonics from the very beginning, and unfortunately many parents have only ever been taught apple, but ball, kit, cat, dirt, dog, and what they're going to do is they're going to use that teaching that they had to then work with their children. If they've only got that knowledge and understanding, it's going to be very, very hard for them to help their children with reading and writing. And that's what I find with lots of parents who have children who struggle. They go, I actually don't know how to teach my children. So a very important thing for parents is to understand the process of what THRASS is about. Because I always say, THRASS is just not about children, our children in our schools. THRASS is actually about everyone. And understanding real phonics is about everyone. Even the most able reader, when they come to an unknown word, or if they come to an unknown word that they need to write, will actually fall back and start to rely on phonics. Oh, what's that sound? Or what sound does that spelling choice? Or what sounds could that spelling choice make? So it's important that right from the very beginning that we actually start to teach children about reading and writing. And that means in the home when we're sharing books and we're starting to share environmental print, you go to the shops and you see the soap and you say, oh, that word says soap, and we can hear it soap. Or how do we do the O sound in soap? And then you might be down by the river and you see a boat and you go, oh, O in boat is like in soap, and so forth. The most important thing that we want to see with parents to do is to talk about words, to talk about sounds. And really, it's very important that they start to actually understand that sound system themselves. Then we can do something in the home to help our children to move on in reading and writing. So when we're sharing a book with children, we might be sharing a story about the 3 bears, and we can say, that word says bears. We can actually hear b-e-z. Well, let's have a look at that word. How do we write the b sound? How do we write the air sound? So let's see what we've got in here. How do we do that? We write E-A-R. Well, we might find other words that have got E-A-R that make the sound air. So when we do the word like bear and wear, that might work with wear, and so forth. So we're continually then starting to make these connections. And that's why for me as parents, the more that we look at environmental print, the more we share books, the more we just look at spelling patterns in books, that's what builds up an understanding of reading and writing. There are always telltale signs when children really need to have some help with literacy. One is we can see that they're struggling with any type of word. So we hear this word sight word all the time. Now these sight words are actually what we call high frequency words, words that you're going to see, you're going to read and write lots in books. If I see a child is actually struggling with sight words, I know that child is going to start to have some struggles with literacy, because there is no real understanding of how words are built. And many children, when they've started off and they learn traditional phonics, and then they get to a high frequency word, and then they start to try and sound it out using letter sounds. One letter makes one sound. So they might get to a word like, a very simple word like said, and they go s-a-i-d, 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 and they actually can't get out the word said. So these are some of the telltale signs that I see, and also that children then start to balk with reading and they don't want to do it. I'm not interested in it. All children are really interested in reading. All of us want to learn to read and we want to enjoy it. And one of the big things that I love seeing is when I work with children that have had literacy difficulties is how once they start to feel confident again in themselves and competent in what they're doing, how they embrace it and how they want to read more. All they want to do is show you, watch me do this, watch me do that. And they want to show you more and more of what they can do. So yes, there are telltale signs. And I think as parents, when we see our children are struggling, I don't want to do this, I don't like reading, I don't want to have this book, do I have to do this? That's one of my telltale signs that they're actually feeling uncomfortable about that process. I think that THRASS and what we do in THRASS is really important right from the very beginning for children. THRASS has been built around, right from the earliest stages when we start to work with THRASS, about building children's articulation. And we have lots of children who struggle with speech. THRASS is about helping teachers and parents understand why children do different things with articulation. It's also a way that we can help children with articulation. I've seen many speech pathologists who work with THRASS really well, and they find that it's great because it gives them both an auditory and visual and a very tactile spatial reference to show children how sounds are built up. So if a child is saying things like birthday instead of birthday and using the sound f instead of the sound th, we've got not only a visual and auditory reference to say this is what it looks like, this is what we say, but we can move from the f box on the THRASS chart down to the th box on the THRASS chart and say we're not saying it in this box, we actually have to say it in this box. So it's really important right from the very beginning, the very early stages about understanding what THRASS is about. We need to build in phonemic awareness. It doesn't matter who's learning a language, and I've done lots of work in language studies, and I've done a lot of work with ESL. I'm doing a lot of bilingual work that I'm working in Indigenous communities and so forth. Whenever we are learning a new language, the most important thing about a language is actually to learn the sound system. So if English is our first language and it's our children's first language, it's really important that if we are going to speak English well and we're going to understand English well, that we actually start right from the very beginning of understanding the phoneme system of English. That means the sound system of that language. So if we understand the sound system of a language really well, and I'm saying English here, it's very easy for us then to be able to then use that information, that what we call phonemic awareness, that understanding of sounds, to then take it into reading and writing, where then we're doing phonics, we're actually applying the actual symbols that you need in written English. So if we're doing the word moon, that the children can hear the sounds m, oo, n. We can then say, right, the first sound we can hear is m. What letter do we use to make the m sound? Now let's do the oo sound. What letter or letters do we use to make the oo sound? In this case, we use o. And how do we write the n sound at the end? We use the letter n. So it's really important for us then to be able to go from what I can hear to what I write or what I see. And that is one of the biggest differences between teaching THRASS as a phonics process and teaching other traditional phonics processes. Because THRASS works from what you call phonographic, what I can hear to what I see or write. Whereas most early phonics teaching starts from what we call graphophonics. Grapho meaning a graphic, a drawing, to then the sound. So teachers will hold up a letter A and they'll say, this is the graphic, this is an A, and its sound is A. So the child holds onto that and it says, oh, this is an A and its sound is A. Or if they hold up a letter O and they say, this is an O, its sound is O. If we go back to that word moon, how is it going to help me with moon if I think that the letter O is an O? If I'm going to do the word moon, I have to hear the sound oo, and I also am going to see two letter O's in that word. So the last thing I want my children to go is to go n, because that's exactly what you're going to get. They need to know that the two O's together can make that sound oo. If I take the THRASS chart itself, the THRASS chart to me is the ultimate teaching resource. We know that children learn in a multisensory way. So when we're using auditory, visual, tactile, if we can use those three skills and three strategies teaching all the time, we know that it's going to make it easier for our learners. They can hear, they can see, they can feel, they can touch. That's why the THRASS chart was set up the way it was set up. So the THRASS chart, it tells us everything that we need to know about English. And like I say to the children, it's a system. So what this chart is doing, it's actually giving you the system of English. It's showing you how it fits together. And if any of you have ever seen a periodic table in chemistry, the THRASS chart works the same way as a periodic table in chemistry. So on our THRASS chart at the top, we have the letter boxes at the top, and we say this is where all the symbols live in English. And these are the symbols that we're going to use to represent all the sounds that we can hear in English. And with those symbols, we have a lowercase version, which we use in most of our reading and writing, and then we have a capital version. And that capital version is really important because we use that for grammar. So we use a capital letter to show the name of a person, a place or a thing, and it also denotes to us that that is the beginning of a sentence. So it's important for us to know what the alphabetic system is and how letters are used. Then I always say to children, on the rest of our chart, we've got our 44 sounds. On the top of the chart, we have our 24 consonant phonemes of English, and on the bottom of the chart is the 20 vowels of English. And in the boxes, we're going to see all the different spelling choices that actually represent that phoneme. And that's where we'll see our graphs and digraphs and trigraphs and so forth on the chart. Now, this reference, and especially having our consonant and vowels on the chart as well, it allows me then to move on to teaching lots and lots of other things about English and language. So when I start off if I have to teach my children syllables, I can quickly say to children, well, when we do syllables, we know that the vowel part of the chart is there for us because we know that every syllable in a word contains the vowel. So if I've got one vowel sound in a word, it means that I'm going to have one syllable. If I've got two vowel sounds in a word, it means that I'm going to have two syllables. But if I get to a word like pyramid and I'm going to go pyramid, I've got three vowel sounds, so I've got three syllables in that word. So that THRASS chart then allows me to do all the teaching that I need for children to understand the structure of English words.